In the world of true crime, some stories are strange, but then there are those that twist reality itself. Tales so dark, so disturbing, they don't just shock you, they stay with you. Tonight, we're descending into the most chilling, mind-bending cases that shattered everything we thought we knew about humanity. Imagine wanting to disappear so badly that you decide to fake your own murder. To do that, you need a body. But what if you don't just find any body? Searching for one person, your perfect double. This is the chilling true story of a woman who found her doppelganger and then murdered her to frame the man she hated most. This is the case of Shalaban K., the beauty influencer whose obsession with revenge turned deadly. Shalaban K. was born on April 30th, 1999, in a small village in Iraq. When she was 6, her family moved to Germany, settling in the city of Ingolstadt. Her parents were strict and deeply religious, determined to raise their daughter with the traditional values of their homeland. But Shalaban was growing up in a different world. She quickly absorbed the modern culture of her new country, and even at a young age, showed signs of a fiercely independent and defiant personality. She hated being told what to do and dreamed of breaking free. Her ambition was to build a career in the beauty industry, envisioning herself as a popular stylist and influencer. She spent hours watching makeup tutorials, convinced she would one day launch her own cosmetics brand. To get what she wanted, Shalaban often resorted to emotional outbursts and manipulative tactics. She was a force of nature, and she almost always got her way. At 15, she met a 17-year-old boy named Ruin. Like Shalaban, he was also from an Iraqi family that had moved to Germany. They connected instantly, but knowing their traditional families would never approve, they kept their relationship a secret. Their secret was exposed when Shalaban's cousin spotted them together. Instead of telling her parents, he tried to blackmail her. Shalaban refused to be a victim. In a bold power move, she went straight to her parents and told them everything about the relationship and the blackmail. While her parents were shocked, her cousin's leverage was gone. They forbade her from seeing Ruin, but she ignored them. The moment she turned 18, she and Ruin married, and she cut off all contact with her family for over a year. Together, Shalaban and Ruin opened a small hair salon. She was a makeup artist, he was a hairstylist. Business was good, and it seemed their dreams were finally within reach. But their happy beginning quickly unraveled. Shalaban's intense, jealous, and short-tempered personality began to poison the relationship. Arguments escalated from private disputes to public confrontations. Her jealousy was boundless. She was suspicious of nearly every woman Ruin interacted with, sometimes lashing out at their own clients. This aggressive behavior damaged their business, but she was beyond reason. One day, during a fight at a local cafe, she lost control, hurling a dessert across the room. That public meltdown earned them a lifetime ban from the establishment and made them the subject of local gossip. The arguments soon turned physical, with Ruin often bearing the brunt of her rage. Yet, strangely, neither considered divorce. It was as if they were resigned to their toxic cycle. When the 2020 pandemic lockdowns hit, the forced proximity led to a brief reconciliation. But by 2021, with restrictions easing, Shalaban's desire for freedom returned. She bought herself a sleek black Mercedes-Benz and embraced the nightlife, having casual flings with other men. One of these flings turned into a passionate affair with a man named Jacob. Even as she openly cheated on Ruan, she continued to police his every move. checking his phone and accusing him of infidelity. Then, unexpectedly, Sharaban discovered she was pregnant. She had no doubt Jacob was the father. She told Ruwan she was pregnant and leaving him. Ruwan was crushed. But Sharaban's plan hit a wall when Jacob, caught off guard, told her he wasn't ready to be a father. Lost and isolated, she became vulnerable to pressure from Ruwan's family, who convinced her to terminate the pregnancy. The resentment she felt toward her husband and his family festered. In a moment of pure rage, she stormed into the home of Ruwan's brother and attacked both him and his wife with a stun device. That was the final straw. Ruwan filed for divorce and obtained a restraining order. The salon, legally registered in his name, was now part of their court battle. Sharaban had lost her husband, her business, and the support of their community. Alone in a rented apartment, bitter and isolated, she began to develop a dark and dangerous plan for revenge. Her idea was as elaborate as it was insane. She would fake her own death and frame Ruwan for the murder. If it worked, he would go to prison, and she would be free to start a new life. To pull it off, she needed a body. Specifically, a young woman who looked just like her. Sharaban began scouring social media, hunting for her double. She scanned countless profiles, analyzing photos and shortlisting potential targets. Eventually, she found the perfect match, a 23-year-old waitress, an aspiring actress named Khadija. From social media, Sharaban learned that Khadija had grown up in foster care, meaning there were likely no close family members who would immediately raise an alarm. Like Sharaban, Khadija was an immigrant who dreamed of a bigger life. The resemblance was uncanny. They had the same height, build, dark hair, and similar facial features. They could have passed for sisters. In April 2022, Sharaban created a fake Instagram profile, posing as a talent scout for a famous German rapper. She messaged Khadija, offering her a role in a music video. Khadija was ecstatic, but when she messaged the rapper directly to express her excitement, he told her there was no music video and no casting. Realizing she'd been deceived, Khadija blocked the fake account and Sharaban was back to square one. Undeterred, she created a new persona, the owner of a new beauty salon. She contacted Khadija again, this time offering a free promotional beauty treatment. All Khadija had to do was let them film the process for marketing. It sounded legitimate, and Khadija agreed. Sharaban even offered to pick her up and drop her off. In the weeks leading up to the meeting, Sharaban's planning became meticulous. She got the exact same haircut as Khadija and dyed her hair to match perfectly. She also moved back in with her parents, pretending she wanted to reconcile. In her twisted plan, they were the key witnesses who would misidentify the body. The day was set for August 16th. Sharaban asked Khadija to wear a dark blue dress she'd seen in her photos. Sharaban had bought the exact same dress and wore it in front of her parents all day. Before leaving, she told them she was going to meet Ruwan to settle their business affairs, pretending to be nervous. "Wish me luck," she said as she walked out the door. Hours passed. When Sharaban's mother tried calling, the phone went straight to voicemail. As night fell, panic set in. Her parents got in their car and drove towards the neighborhood where Ruwan lived, searching for her. And then they saw it. Parked on the side of a dark road was Sharaban's black Mercedes. The windows were tinted, but through the windshield, they could make out a figure lying motionless in the back seat. The doors were locked. Frantic, they called the police. When officers arrived and opened the vehicle, they found a chilling scene. A young woman's body was sprawled in the back, surrounded by blood. A later examination would reveal she had been stabbed over 50 times, with many wounds concentrated on her face, disfiguring her beyond recognition. Despite the horrific injuries, Sharaban's parents identified the body as their daughter. She was wearing the right dress. Her purse with her ID was nearby. The news spread like wildfire, and suspicion immediately fell on Ruin. He had motive, and when police went to question him, he had vanished. But investigators had lingering doubts. The facial injuries seemed intentionally designed to prevent identification. The next day, their doubts were confirmed. A woman named Samira filed a missing person report for her friend, Khadija. When police saw her photo, the resemblance to Sharabin was striking. DNA analysis confirmed the horrifying truth. The victim was not Sharabin. It was the missing waitress, Khadija. The entire case was turned on its head. Investigators soon discovered that Sharabin and her new boyfriend, a man named Sharud, had tried to hire a hitman for 30,000 euros. When that failed, they decided to do it themselves. But this is where the meticulous plan descends into sheer absurdity. Despite faking her own death, Sharabin made no attempt to hide. She and Sharud were arrested just 2 days later when a customer at a local cafe recognized her and called the police. In custody, their criminal alliance crumbled. They immediately turned on each other. Sharud claimed Sharabin was the mastermind who carried out the act alone. Sharabin claimed she backed out at the last minute and that Sharabin committed the murder. According to her version, she and Sharud picked up Khadija, with Sharud posing as her driver. They drove to a deserted wooded area, faked a flat tire, and when Khadija stepped out of the car, Sharud attacked her with a knife. Afterwards, they placed her body in the back seat, drove to Rowan's neighborhood, abandoned the car, and walked away. The lack of logic baffled everyone. If the plan had worked, what was next? Sharaban had no money, no new identity, and no escape plan. With her face all over the news, she couldn't have hidden anywhere in Europe. Furthermore, by faking her death, she would have forfeited any legal claim to the salon she so desperately wanted. During the trial, both defendants continued to blame each other, showing no remorse. In January 2024, the court found both Sharaban K. and Sharud K. guilty of murder. The judge called it a brutally premeditated crime and sentenced them both to life in prison. A twisted plan for revenge, born from jealousy and rage, ended not in freedom, but in a life sentence, and cost an innocent young woman with dreams of her own her life. If this case moved you, please take a moment to hit the like button. It won't cost you anything, but helps us a lot. 3 bright young women vanished after a night out, but what investigators found next would ignite fury across a nation. On April 4th, 2023, 3 close friends, Denise Reyna, Juliana Macias, and Nayeli Tapia, left Santo Domingo, Ecuador, for what was meant to be a short beach trip to Casablanca in the Esmeraldas province. None of them would return. Denise, 19, was studying veterinary medicine. She cared for stray animals and dreamed of opening her own clinic. Juliana, 21, had recently graduated from the Zyla Institute in Transportation Engineering. She was the class valedictorian and an aspiring singer who performed under the name Syria. Nayeli, 22, was a young mother juggling modeling work and caring for her 4-year-old daughter. They had been friends for years. Their chat group was active daily. They shared ambitions, family updates, and plans for the future. When an acquaintance named Luis Fernando Vaca, a friend of Denise, proposed a quick getaway to the coast, the idea sounded simple. A few days near the sea, daytime travel, return by the weekend. To make it clearer, Vaca encouraged Denise to bring her friends. Denise consulted Juliana and Nayeli, discussed dates, costs, transport, and agreed that all 3 would travel together. Nothing sounded unusual. The chosen destination, Casablanca Beach, was popular and safe. The plan was to leave Santo Domingo in the evening after finishing errands. At about 7 p.m. on April 4th, Vaca arrived in a rented black Chevrolet Sail. Denise and Nayeli joined him first and then picked up Juliana. A second vehicle, driven by Holger Zambrano and his brother Andre Zambrano, along with their associate Amar Ardanos, was heading in the same direction. The trip began normally. The two cars were seen several times along the main highway linking Santo Domingo to the coast. Around 11 p.m., however, subtle signs of danger appeared. Denise sent a text to a friend, "I have a bad feeling." Around the same time, Nayeli shared her real-time phone location with her sister. The dot on the map moved steadily west until it left the main highway and turned onto a rural back road. Within minutes, the signal went dark. Those were the last digital traces from the three friends. The following morning, their families expected a simple message confirming their arrival at Casablanca. No message came. Calls went straight to voicemail. By midday, April 5th, relatives were contacting one another, checking with friends, and retracing the route from Santo Domingo toward Esmeraldas. Nayeli's sister reviewed the previous night's location data and saw the last update stop abruptly 50 kilometers from the coast. It never resumed. Each family filed a missing person report that afternoon. Attorney Paulina Rueda, Juliana's aunt, submitted the official paperwork to Ecuador's National Police. The case was classified as urgent. Alerts went to roadside checkpoints and hospitals along the route. Social media posts with photos and emergency numbers spread rapidly across the country. Volunteers began monitoring incoming tips and building a timeline based on verified messages and calls. By April 6th, investigators had lists of dates, times, and the women's last known locations. Late that evening, there were still no sightings. The rental Chevrolet was unaccounted for. Police extended searches to rural areas along the secondary road marked by Nayeli's final GPS ping. On April 7th, fishermen working along the Esmeraldas River noticed a dog digging near a patch of brush. When they checked, they found a partially buried human body. Police responded immediately and uncovered two more bodies nearby. All three victims were female, their hands bound, mouths covered with tape, clothing consistent with beach attire. Forensic specialists confirmed multiple sharp force and blunt force injuries. The pattern of wounds indicated prolonged physical assault. Cause of death for each was deep neck trauma consistent with cuts from a heavy blade. Defensive wounds on Denise's hands suggested she had tried to fight back. The bodies were transported to the Santo Domingo morgue for identification. Families were called in, and despite severe disfigurement from the injuries, physical markers and tattoos confirmed their identities. Denise Reyna, Juliana Macias, and Nayeli Tapia had been murdered. Autopsy reports described meticulous brutality, binding marks, bruises, stab wounds, and signs of torture. The forensic timeline placed death on the night of April 4th between 11 p.m. and midnight, the very window when their phones went silent. Investigators compared that time frame to Nayeli's final location data. The GPS coordinates matched almost exactly with the river area where the bodies were recovered. The night the signal stopped, the Chevrolet had left the highway near that zone. Attention turned to the vehicles. Through surveillance footage from roadside businesses, police identified a black Chevrolet Sail followed closely by another car. The first matched the description of the rental driven by Vaca. The second belonged to the Zambrano brothers and Arnaz. Both cars left the main highway near Quininde, close to the Esmeraldas River, and never reappeared on cameras afterward. Rental records showed the Chevrolet had been leased under Holger Zambrano's name days before the trip. He told the agency he needed it for a coastal vacation, and scheduled a return the following week. That link placed both Zambrano brothers and Vaca within the same circle of coordination. When the vehicle was later located in Santo Domingo, investigators found traces of blood and fibers inside the trunk and passenger seats. Luminal testing revealed biological material in several areas, and one fingernail fragment lodged near the dashboard. Genetic analysis matched it to Denise Reyna. The forensic team concluded the killings had occurred inside or around the car, not at the burial site, suggesting the riverbank was only used to hide the bodies afterward. As physical evidence mounted, police centered on 4 suspects: Luis Fernando Vaca, who organized and drove the women; Holger Zambrano, who rented the car; Andres Zambrano, who traveled in the second vehicle; and Amar Ardanos, an associate with a prior record for weapons offenses. Investigators reconstructed the route and communication logs between the 2 cars. Messages exchanged that evening showed coordination on meeting points and timing. Witnesses said both cars stopped near gas stations before veering off toward the interior roads. The prosecution developed 2 main hypotheses. First theory: a confrontation and violent outburst triggered by coercion or rejection, that the women resisted unwanted attention and were attacked as a result. Second theory: deliberate premeditation, the route diversion, second vehicle, burial site preparation, and later cleaning of the car suggested planning. Foreclosure of either motive required more evidence, but what was clear was coordination among all 4 men. By the end of May 2023, arrest warrants were issued. Police captured Holger and Andres Zambrano near Ecuador's southern border as they attempted to cross into Peru. Their detainment confirmed fears they were fleeing prosecution. Each man was charged with qualified homicide and obstruction of justice. A few weeks later, a new twist complicated the case. The decomposed remains of Luis Fernando Vaca were discovered in Chimborazo province, hundreds of kilometers away. He had been killed, dismembered, and buried anonymously. Forensic timing placed his death shortly after the women's disappearance. Investigators suspected internal retaliation, meant to silence potential testimony. That development shifted suspicion toward the remaining suspects and suggested broader involvement, possibly a criminal network. Authorities traced communications between Ardanos and contacts linked to a local gang known for arms trafficking. Throughout 2023, family lawyer Paulina Rueda demanded expanded investigation and reclassification of the case as femicide, arguing the murders were rooted in gender-based violence. Prosecutors countered that legal definition required an existing romantic or familial relationship, which was absent here. They labeled the charges homicide. Advocates denounced the decision as minimizing the motive. Demonstrations took place in Santo Domingo, Quito, and Esmeraldas, urging recognition that hate or gender contempt could exist without romantic ties. In November 2023, police finally arrested Amar Ardanos after months in hiding. Charges connected him directly through coordinated movement data and forensic evidence from both vehicles. His past convictions for illegal firearm possession and his gang connections reinforced the claim that the crime had been organized. With all primary suspects in custody or deceased, prosecutors prepared the formal indictment. Evidence included forensic reports of biological traces inside the Chevrolet sale, GPS and phone data confirming the convoy's synchronized path, surveillance videos along the route, witness identifications, and expert testimony on trauma patterns. On April 9, 2024, The first trial opened in Esmeralda's provincial court. Defendants: Andrés Zambrano and Omar Ardanos. A separate proceeding assessed Holger Zambrano's role in renting the car. During the hearings, prosecutors outlined how the route change, the isolation of the site, and the discovery of the blood-stained car formed a consistent sequence connecting defendants to the murders. Witnesses included rental company employees and people who had seen the cars traveling together that night. Defense attorneys attempted to shift blame entirely onto the late Luis Vaca, claiming he had acted alone and that their clients were unaware of his intentions. They filed motions to exclude surveillance footage and biological samples, alleging improper chain of custody. The court denied these motions after verifying proper forensic handling. For Holger Zambrano, the court concluded that evidence established only his administrative role in renting the car, but not his physical presence during the killings. He was acquitted of murder charges, but remained under investigation for obstruction. On May 17, 2024, judges rendered the main verdict. Andrés Zambrano and Omar Ardanos were found guilty of homicide and sentenced to 34 years and 8 months in prison. The ruling cited the forensic consistency between car evidence, GPS data, and coordinated actions. Despite the convictions, the victims' families declared the outcome incomplete. In their view, the downgraded charge of homicide ignored clear gender-based motivation. They continued to advocate for legal reforms, distinguishing violence against women even outside intimate relationships. Attorney Paulina Ruida's pursuit of expanded inquiry did not end at sentencing. She submitted new filings seeking to identify any individuals who might have aided the suspects or destroyed evidence. Her public statements attracted increasing hostility. In June 2024, Ruida reported being followed and photographed near her home. In July, she began receiving threatening calls and messages. She notified authorities, but no protective action followed. On August 5th, her teenage son was found dead. Police described it as a domestic incident. However, the family insisted it was retaliation related to the triple murder case. Weeks later, Ruida herself disappeared. 2 days after her disappearance, she was located alive in the Tesagua area of Manabí province, treated for exhaustion and minor injuries. She refused to discuss details publicly, but investigators confirmed she had been abducted and later released. Her family stated the motive was intimidation tied to her legal advocacy. The government never revealed who orchestrated the abduction, and no arrests were made. The event deepened fears that the network behind the murders reached further than the convicted men. By early 2025, 2 years after the discovery along the Esmeraldas River, relatives organized a private memorial at the site. A simple stone with etched names, Denise Reyna, Juliana Macias, Nayeli Tapia, marks the place. Activists gather annually, tying white ribbons and lighting candles. The ritual is both mourning and protest. Each year they repeat the same demand: comprehensive justice, full recognition of gender-based violence, and accountability for threats against those pursuing the case. In the record books, the case of the 3 Santo Domingo friends is labeled closed. 2 perpetrators are serving long sentences. The primary organizer is dead. Yet for the families, closure remains out of reach. Key questions linger. Was the attack spontaneous or planned? Were additional participants involved? Who silenced Luis Vaca and why? Beyond the legal conclusions, the story exposed systemic weaknesses, delays in police response, misclassification of crimes, and limited protection for victims' counsel. It transformed into a national conversation about how justice defines motive and whose voices receive protection. What began as a casual trip among trusted companions ended as one of the most notorious crimes in Ecuador's modern history. A mother of 3 young boys vanishes from her home. Her husband, the man who should be leading the search, instead offers a chaotic series of conflicting stories. Within 24 hours, detectives know this isn't a missing person case. It's a homicide. This is the story of Shayla Cabrera, a 33-year-old woman whose plan to escape a life of fear was cut short by an act of brutal betrayal, sparking an international manhunt that exposed the dark realities hidden behind a suburban front door. Shayla was born in Peru, a woman whose friends remember for her warm, infectious laugh and a deep love for her family. She was nurturing by nature, finding joy in simple things, baking, music, and above all, being a mother. In her early 20s, she met Josimar Cabrera. He was also from Peru, a man whose quiet and steady demeanor seemed to promise a life of security. They fell in love, sharing a powerful ambition to build a better future in the United States. They made the journey, eventually settling in the desert community of Lancaster, California. Shayla began working in childcare, a perfect fit for her loving spirit, while Josimar found work in the construction trade. Soon, their family grew to include 3 sons. To the outside world, they were the image of a striving immigrant family. But inside their home, the dream was decaying. Josimar's steady nature had hardened into rigid control. Friends and family would later recount to investigators a disturbing and classic pattern of domestic abuse. His protection had become possession. His concern had soured into constant suspicion. He monitored her phone, isolated her from friends, and grew intensely jealous of any life she had outside of him. Her very identity was being erased. Shayla's love for her children became his most powerful weapon, a tool he used to keep her trapped and silent. By the summer of 2024, after years of enduring this hidden torment, Shayla had made a decision. She was done. She confided in a close friend that she was secretly saving money and making a plan to leave. She wasn't seeking drama. She was seeking peace. A small, safe apartment where she could raise her sons without fear. She was just weeks away from executing her escape plan. It was a chance at a new life that she would never get. The official police timeline began on August 12, 2024. Shayla's family, frantic after more than a day of unanswered calls and texts, reported her missing. Deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department arrived at the Cabrera residence on Lancaster Boulevard. They were met by Josimar. His role was clear, the distraught husband, desperate for help. But his performance was unconvincing. He immediately began offering explanations that were not just inconsistent, but strategically deceptive. His first story was that Shayla had been detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. It was a calculated lie, designed to create bureaucratic confusion and prey on the fears of an immigrant community, delaying any real investigation. When detectives began asking questions he couldn't answer, he abruptly changed his story. Now, he claimed, she had run off with another man, a cruel attempt to assassinate her character and paint her as an unfit mother. When that lie also crumbled under scrutiny, he offered a third, even more sinister explanation. She had suffered an accident, but he refused to provide a single detail. 3 stories in less than 24 hours. For experienced homicide detectives, the pattern was undeniable. A grieving spouse searches for a single desperate truth. A guilty man throws out a web of lies, hoping one will catch. They immediately ceased treating him as a witness and began investigating him as their prime suspect. This was no longer a search for a missing woman. It was a hunt for her body and her killer. The investigative focus pivoted from his words to his actions. Detectives knew the truth would be found, not in his testimony, but in the digital breadcrumbs he left behind. They began a systematic canvass of the apartment complex, requesting access to every security camera, every doorbell recorder. They needed to see what he did in the hours after Shayla went silent. A neighbor's Ring camera provided the answer. The footage was grainy and devoid of color, but its content was horrifyingly clear. It showed Josimar Cabrera in the dead of night, struggling with immense effort. He was dragging a large, heavy object, completely wrapped in a thick piece of fabric, from his apartment. The shape was amorphous, but its dead weight was unmistakable. This was not a piece of trash or discarded furniture. This was a human body. The video captured his frantic, clumsy movements as he wrestled the terrible burden into his vehicle before driving away, disappearing into the darkness. This was the turning point, the silent digital witness that unraveled his entire facade. The LA Sheriff's Homicide Bureau officially took command of the case. They now knew, with sickening certainty, that Shayla was dead, and they had irrefutable video evidence of her husband removing her body from their home. The investigation immediately split into two parallel high-stakes operations. The first was a massive ground search to find Shayla. Using cell phone tower data that pinged Josimar's phone, detectives tracked his route east from Lancaster into the vast, unforgiving wilderness of the Angeles National Forest. This was a search area covering over 700,000 acres of steep canyons, dense woods, and treacherous cliffs. Specialized mountain search and rescue teams were deployed, beginning the painstaking task of combing the rugged terrain. It was a monumental effort against overwhelming odds. The second operation was an urgent manhunt. Josimar Cabrera had vanished, and in a final act of calculated cruelty, he had taken their 3 young sons with him. The loving father was now a fugitive and a kidnapper. Investigators quickly determined he was fleeing south, likely heading for his native Peru. An international alert was issued, and the sheriff's department began an intense collaboration with law enforcement in Mexico and Peru. They tracked his credit card usage and monitored border crossings, piecing together his escape route. He was running, and he was using his own children as human shields. On Saturday, August 16th, 4 days after Shayla was last seen, a breakthrough came from the search teams in the forest. A rescue worker, scanning a remote embankment off a mountain highway, spotted a piece of fabric. It was partially obscured by rocks and brush, but its color and texture matched the material from the Ring camera video. Homicide detectives raced to the location. The scene was desolate, deliberately chosen for its isolation. This was a place where secrets were meant to stay buried. As they carefully made their way down the steep slope, they found what they were looking for. Inside the wrapping, they discovered the body of Shayla Cabrera. Her life had been brutally taken, and her remains discarded like trash. The search for Shayla was over. The hunt for her killer was about to become a global priority. With the tragic discovery of Shayla's body, the case against Josimar Cabrera transitioned from a strong theory to an ironclad certainty. The prosecution now had everything it needed: his web of lies, a history of abuse confirmed by family and friends, forensic evidence being gathered from the couple's home and vehicle, and the damning video that directly linked him to the disposal of his wife's body in the exact wilderness area where she was found. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office acted decisively. On August 21st, they formally charged Josimar Cabrera with 1 count of murder, adding a special allegation for the use of a knife as a deadly weapon, indicating the brutal nature of the crime. The legal mechanisms for an international manhunt were immediately set into motion. An extradition arrest warrant was secured, and Interpol issued a red notice. This act effectively designated Josimar as one of the most wanted fugitives on the planet, placing his face and fingerprints in the databases of law enforcement agencies in 196 member countries. However, the fugitive had a head start. It was discovered that during his escape, he had been briefly stopped and questioned by authorities at checkpoints in both Mexico and Peru. But in a stroke of bad timing for law enforcement, the formal murder warrant had not yet been fully processed through the complex international systems. Without an active warrant in their databases, they had no legal authority to detain him. He was questioned and released, slipping through their grasp just hours before the global alert became active. While the international chase intensified, the community back in Lancaster was reeling from the news. A candlelight vigil was organized at City Hall, drawing hundreds of residents. People who had never met Shayla stood in solemn silence, holding signs that read "Justice for Shayla" and "Not one more." It was a powerful and heartbreaking public grieving, not just for the woman who had been murdered, but for the 3 innocent children caught in the epicenter of the tragedy. Their mother was dead, and their father was a globally recognized fugitive. Amidst the manhunt, a crucial piece of positive news emerged from Peru. Authorities there announced they had located the 3 Cabrera boys in Lima. They were physically unharmed and were immediately taken into protective custody. While their father continued to evade capture, a multinational diplomatic effort was launched to bring the children home. In a carefully coordinated operation, the boys were flown from Peru to Mexico City and then finally back to Los Angeles. They were tearfully reunited with their maternal grandmother, who now faced the monumental task of raising them and helping them navigate a future irrevocably scarred by their father's actions. For nearly a week after the red notice was issued, Josimar remained a ghost in his home country. But his anonymity was gone. His face was broadcast on every news channel from Lima to Cusco. His name was in every newspaper. He was the subject of a nationwide manhunt in a country now fully aware of the horrific crime he was accused of. There was no corner of Peru where he could hide. The pressure was suffocating and inescapable. On August 27th, he finally accepted his fate. He walked into the Interpol headquarters in the capital city of Lima and surrendered. The Peruvian National Police documented the moment, releasing a video that was seen around the world. It showed Josimar, his face impassive and his shoulders slumped in defeat, as he was placed in handcuffs. The man who had shown such a desperate will to escape now appeared completely resigned. His run from justice was officially over. Josimar Cabrera was taken to a Peruvian prison where he awaits the conclusion of the formal extradition process that will bring him back to California to stand trial. The legal journey is methodical and can take many months, but his return to face an American jury is not a matter of if, but when. If convicted on all charges, he faces a sentence of 26 years to life in prison. For the dedicated detectives of the LA Sheriff's Department, his capture was not a moment of triumph, but one of solemn duty fulfilled. A promise made to a victim and her family had been kept. But the story doesn't end with an arrest. It continues in the lives of 3 young boys who must now grow up in the shadow of this tragedy. It continues in the enduring grief of Shayla's family, who are determined that she be remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived. A vibrant, loving woman who dreamed of opening her own bakery and whose world revolved around her children. Her murder has served as a brutal and urgent wake-up call. It highlights a terrifyingly common pattern in domestic violence fatalities. The most dangerous time for a victim is often the moment they decide to leave. Shayla's plan for freedom was the very catalyst for her death. Her case has sparked vital conversations about the need for better resources and safer exit strategies for those trying to escape abusive relationships. Shayla Cabrera was not a headline. She was a person, a mother, a daughter, a friend. Her life had value. Her death was a preventable tragedy. The legal system will now seek justice for her. But true justice would have been for her to live, to watch her sons grow up, and to build the peaceful life she so desperately wanted. Her memory now stands as a powerful call to action, to listen, to believe, and to intervene before the silence becomes permanent. If this case moved you, please hit the like button. And if you want to see more true crime stories like this, don't forget to subscribe our channel. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.